Welcome back to Session 2. Today we'll be talking about steps to incorporating the siop model into your classroom. We'll be discussing the 8 components of the siop model. Okay, I'm going to take a moment to review from the first session, and for English learners, review is essential in the classroom as well for your other students. siop is an acronym for Sheltered Instruction Observation Protocol. This method provides purposeful teaching of the language necessary for English learners to understand the content. Also, we talked about that this will not only help your English learners, however, this method will help all of your students. We also discussed BICS and CAP. BICS is your basic communicative skills, and CAPS is the cognitive academic language proficiency. And it usually takes a student longer to develop the cognitive academic talk before the basic. Okay, we also discussed culture and customs that come along into the classroom with your students. And we also said that do not stress. This is not anything new. There is very little to change, and most of you are already doing this in your classroom now. And that's one of the reasons why we chose this model. Also, if you'll remember to join the Edmodo group so we can chat and have discussions about what we've learned and what we've talked about. And the group number is USP 6IH. USP 6IH. And if you'll just go to Edmodo and create an account, and if you have any questions about that, just shoot me an email and I'll be more than happy to walk you through. Now I'm going to get started with the 8 components of siop. The 8 components are lesson preparation, building background, comprehensible input, strategies, interaction, practice, lesson delivery, and assessment. Also, you might want to investigate the background schooling. Sometimes the students have not had schooling in their native language. So first you need to sort of access and discover what they know in their native language, and have they had schooling in their native language, because that will absolutely affect how fast or how slow they'll learn the second language. And a lot of the students that we might get have very limited formal schooling. They may have gone some, but then they might have quit, and when they come to the States and then started work, and then they may come back. So you need to really know exactly how much schooling they've had in their native language, what they know in their native language, because that could make a huge difference in learning and acquiring the English language. Now, there are many factors that go into assessing English learners, and some may learn faster than others. And also there is a time called silent period that your English learner may actually go through. This is totally normal. They are faced with so many adversities and problems, not with just the language, but with communication altogether. And it's not, they may not want to be here. It might be their parents' choice that they're here. And so we have to take all of these factors into consideration when determining how fast or how slow or whatever that they may acquire the English language. Now, pronunciation is a big deal, especially among your peers and classmates when you're teenager, even younger students. So take that into consideration, and I'm going to show you a short video clip and to show you how some of these students might feel.
If I'm going to America, I'm going to have to learn to speak with a flawless American accent so as not to arouse suspicion. So find me the greatest accent coach in the world.
I would like to buy a hamburger.
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 No. Let's break it down. I would
Would.
would
Weird.
would
Weird.
would
Would.
like
Like.
to
Toi.
to
Toi.
to
Toi.
buy
B.
buy
B.
buy
B. B.
a
A.
hamburger
Hamburger.
hamburger
Hamburger.
hamburger
Hamburger.
ham
M.
burger.
Burger.
I would like to buy a hamburger.
I would like to buy a hamburger.
It's not hamburger, hamburger.
I'm not saying dimburger. I said I would like to buy a hamburger.
I would like to buy a hamburger.
I would like to buy the hamburger.
Hamburger.
I would like to buy a hamburger.
Maybe we should stop.
We don't quit. We do not quit. Again.
I would like to buy a hamburger.
I would like to buy a
I
hamburger.
would like to buy a hamburger.
I would like to buy the burger.
I would like to buy a hamburger.
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 The burger.
Okay, if you have an English learner in your classroom, each spring they take what's called the access test. And this test actually tells what level their language is at. And it also tells how much they've improved from the previous year. This test is very important for English learners because it can also, they see how much they learn, where they are, and also they use this score to see if the English learners can test out of the program. So this test is usually given every spring and it's very important for these English learners. Okay, so if you have an English learner in your room, you may be wanting to see, you should be given a can-do descriptor with the student's name in what level that they have tested in. And so every teacher should be given this. This is just an example of the can-do descriptors, grade level, cluster 3 through 5, and it is exactly what it says it is. This tells you if they're level 2 beginning, then they can categorize, they can arrange pictures, they can follow 2-step oral directions. So this gives you an idea of, hey, this is what this student that you have in your class, this is what he can do in speaking, listening. So this is very important that you have this because it's different than just looking at a score. I can tell you, Jose made a 4.2 on his access. As a regular classroom teacher, you're going to look at me and say, okay, what does that mean? So this is a way that we can give the information to you and say, hey, this is what your English learner, this is what your student can do. And this is great to use and to assess the student and know where they are coming into the classroom with these can-do descriptors. Okay, this is just another example of a can-do descriptor, and like level 1, you may have you see the person's name, they're entering, and then they're beginning, and then you can use the previous slide that I showed you to see exactly what they can do. But this is one that shows the student's name listed in each subject. Like Tomas, he's a level 5 on bridging, he's level 5 on listening. However, look at Tomas on speaking. He is a level 2, and that is very common in English learners. They're going to comprehend and understand so much more than what they can produce. So you may think they are not totally getting this at all, I'm wasting my time, and they may actually be understanding, but they may not be able to verbally tell you that they will be able to understand a lot more than they will be able to produce. So that's very common in learning a second language. And then look at reading. So he goes back to a level 5 for reading. Tomas. And then writing, he goes back to a level 2. So that's a perfect example of showing you that he can understand and comprehend a lot more than he can produce, because both speaking and writing is the production of the language. So what you want to do as a regular classroom teacher is ask your building coordinator, hey, I have this English language learner in my class. I think she is an English learner, and I need to see his or her can-do descriptor. I need the can-do descriptor chart to see exactly where he is. Okay, now we'll get into the first component of the siop model, which is preparation. And I added this little cartoon because I thought this was appropriate now that we have just gotten our iPads as well. Preparation. And this is a teacher on the first day, and she says, with your mobile device, tweet in 140 characters or less, how was your summer vacation? And one student says, I'm not synced, and I have no Wi-Fi connection, and my battery is dead. We know as teachers that you have to be prepared. Preparation is just half of the journey, but without that half, I think the rest is useless. And I know we've all had those days where we've just sort of winged it or had to do what we had to do. But if you're like me, those days were not fun at all. So preparation is one of the most important parts of teaching and planning a lesson. It is essential. You have to have preparation. I like this because sometimes I'm not synced with my students, or I feel like my battery is totally dead. So as teachers, we have to be prepared. We have to have plan B. Let's say that a student says, hey, my battery is dead on my iPad. I can't get Wi-Fi connection at home. You always have to have a plan B. So if you're not prepared for plan A, then how are you going to have plan B? So preparation is very important. If I'm not prepared at the beginning of the day, the rest of the day is just downhill from there. Preparation is number one key to success in the classroom. In the preparation, it features content objectives, language objectives, content concepts, supplementary materials, adaptation of content, and meaningful activities. I like to remember this as CLAMS: content, language, adaptations, meaningful, supplementary materials. That's an acronym that you can use to remember it. Okay, let's talk a little bit about content objectives versus language objectives. You already are familiar with content objectives and you're already using these in your classroom, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on those. You know that the content objectives is related to the key concept of the lesson and your core curriculum and your standards of your class. And the language objectives, you might not use these unless you're actually a language teacher, but the language objectives that you're going to make based on the content objectives need to support the 4 domains of language. That is reading, writing, listening, and speaking. Actually, these 4 components, reading, writing, listening, and speaking, need to be a part of your class every single day. The students do not just need to write or copy or read. They need to be doing all of these. And it really helps. It'll help your English learner, but it will also help your other learners being able to communicate. And that's one of the things that we need to focus on. Okay, when you're writing these standards, content objectives, you know that you use words like identify, solve, investigate, create, draw conclusions. For the language objectives, you're going to use verbs like listen for, retell, define, compare, write, persuade, summarize. Now, how do you write a language objective? You'll simply look at your content objectives and C, how the students will learn the content, whether it's reading, writing, listening, or speaking. So you're actually going to look at the content objectives and think to yourself, how am I going to teach these objectives? What am I going to have my students doing with the language part of it? For example, if the content objective is students will solve word problems using a two-step process, your language objective would simply be students will write a word problem for a classmate to solve using the two-step process. All that the language objective is, it is actually getting those 4 competencies of language in working them into your lesson plan. You want to have the students reading and writing and listening and speaking. Sometimes a quiet classroom is not exactly what you want. Sometimes you need the students to be able to turn to their neighbor and talk. You want them talking. You want them to be able to communicate when they get out in the real world, when they go for interviews. There is a time for listening. There's a time for writing. There's a time for speaking. So you need to make time and make sure that's all that the language objective is. It's actually telling how the student will use those 4 competencies. Now, an objective checklist, you need to make sure they're observable. They're written and presented in language that the students can understand. Sometimes if you put compare and contrast, they may not, if you haven't talked about that, the student's not going to know exactly what that means. So you need to write it in a language that they understand. Related to the key concept of the lesson, promote student academic growth, and connected clearly with the lesson topic or activities. If you're like me, I like to state my objectives and then go back at the end of the lesson and state them. It sort of keeps me on track. It makes me say, okay, did we do this? Can my students do this? And so it's sort of like a self-check for your own self also at the end of the day. Okay, supplementary materials, hands-on manipulatives, realia, pictures, visuals, multimedia, adapted text. Kids really like real-world things. Rather than using the textbook, bring in the newspaper, and the iPads make this it's unreal what you can do with the iPads as far as supplementary materials. So the iPad is a great tool to use to bring some of these things into the classroom. Okay, adaptive content. You, as a teacher, are not only teaching the content and language, I think we're also teaching how to teach kids how to study and how to adapt the content into knowledge. So scaffolding, modeling, marginal notes, graphic organizers, highlighted text. These are all ways that will help the student learn by taking that text or that content and adapting it into a form where they can see and understand. Okay, one of the more important things I think to talk about are meaningful activities. I know at the high school level, if the students think that they're just doing busy work, then they are not going to put any time into it at all. So you need to make it meaningful to them. They need to have a connection. So provide opportunities for students to experience what they are learning. A quote by Ben Franklin is, "Tell me and I forget, teach me and I remember, involve me and I learn." And I think this is so true in the classroom. The students need to be up doing and involved and hands-on and make them a part of the lesson, not just learning the lesson. Okay, now we're going to view our first video. This is actually from one of the authors of the siop Sheltered Instruction Observation Protocol, Making Comprehensible Input into the Classroom, and she is actually the author, one of the authors of the book.
I know you wanted me to check on Sarah and Jenny's spelling work. their
Right.
pretest. They only missed about 5, but that was the pretest. So
Only 5?
yeah, I still reduced their words like we
Okay.
had talked about, so they didn't have as many words. But I think they're going to be fine with our spelling in here, so they can start to mainstream.
I was concerned if they needed to be dropped down to a lower reading level, or if they could do the words.
Right, and this
That
is
would
the
be
second
great.
week that they've been doing that fine.
In the siop model, we begin planning our lessons by assessing our students and what they know and can do based upon the topic we're going to teach. We then also use, of course, our content standards, the siop model, the features and components, and then when we move to teaching our lesson, we're assessing constantly throughout that lesson to see whether our students are understanding and getting what we are teaching.
What factor does every number have? 2. Does 3 have a factor of 2?
No.
If they are not, we then need to move back, we need to adjust, and we need to reteach. This is an ongoing cycle of assessment, of teaching, of reteaching, of assessing, and ultimately determining whether our students have met our content and language objectives.
Okay, now that we've been through preparation and we've prepared and we have our lesson, now we need to focus on building background. And I think this is funny when he says, no, this is nucleus, not its cell phone. So cell, there's so many words, but we have to take the knowledge. If we say cell and they say, oh, I've heard that word before, that's a cell phone, I've heard of a cell phone, then you build on even that knowledge and use it in the classroom. So you have to take the knowledge that they already know, even if it is a cell phone and you're not talking about that, you take that knowledge and you think, okay, great, well at least they know what, they've heard the word cell. And then you take that and you adapt it. Okay, so building background has 3 components. Link concepts to students' background experiences, bridge past learning to new concepts, and emphasize key vocabulary. Okay, some other ways to link students' background is realia, real objects, photos, illustrations, personal experiences. Maybe they can share through oral, written, or drawn explanations. Also, in order to bridge the learning, which means to take the new information and integrate it with what the learner already knows, and we want to make that connection, whether it's a KWL chart, questioning, student journals. First, we need to assess what do these students know about the topic. Okay, one of the most important things is with building background is key vocabulary. And being a language teacher, vocabulary is a big part of the language. It actually is the language. If you do not know any words, then there's no way to communicate or speak. You must know the vocabulary. So it's essential when teaching in any content area. And every content area has key vocabulary. There was a math test that I saw just the other day a student had, and it was a math test, but it was vocabulary, because I think it was geometry, because geometry has key vocabulary that needs to be emphasized in order to work the problems. So vocabulary is not just important in English or reading. It's important in all content area, in any academics. The most effective way to teach vocabulary is not by just making a list and telling them to memorize it. They'll say, okay, sure, and they might study enough to memorize it for the test, and then they'll probably forget it. But they should be actively involved in making sentences with the vocabulary, hearing the use of the vocabulary, maybe making it personal to their own lives. There's games, 4 corners, or word walls are great. Limited vocabulary prevents the students from comprehending the text, instructions, directions for completing assignments, and overall academic achievement. If I say something about addition, subtraction, I could change that to minus. classify, summarize. These are all CALP words, which means that cognitive academic language that they may not know yet. That can really set them up for academic failure if they don't understand the instructions of those words. So we need to pay attention and make sure that we not only explain the key vocabulary in the content, but also in the directions. Okay, when we're talking about building background, poor readers read less often because reading may be difficult or frustrating for them. I think I've read something where if it's 80% of if they do not understand 80% of the words, then they give up. And I see that firsthand teaching a foreign language. Once they realize that, hey, I'm not going to be able to do this, or I don't understand an assignment, they just automatically give up. So we need to improve their reading by improving their vocabulary. For instance, at home, they don't say, please pass the beaker, or let's compare and contrast the vegetables. So they're only getting this language in the academic environment. So it's important for us to stress this key vocabulary. Okay, so teaching specific vocabulary and practicing its usage in the classroom is vital to academic success. Word and word parts are powerful tools of knowledge for the learning the English language, so talking about suffixes and prefixes can also help the students. Okay, now we're going to hear from the author again on building background.
Within the siop model, there are 3 features to the very important component of building background. The first feature has to do with teachers using and connecting background knowledge of the students in the classroom with the content that is being taught for a particular lesson. Now, sometimes teachers will ask me, well, is this the background before these English learners came to the United States, or are we talking about their background since they've come? And my answer is always yes. You try to connect with anything you can connect with in order for the students to say, oh, I get it. Yeah, I learned that, or I experienced it, or oh, I saw that once. So anytime that we can really connect explicitly to the student's background knowledge, the better off we're going to be.
Who can remember an element that would be in a fairy tale or a traditional tale? Joseph. Good, there are animals that are talking. Very good.
The second feature in the siop model within building background is that we make explicit links to past learning. Now you'll say, well, how is that background building? Well, if I'm beginning a second or third day in a unit, or if I'm teaching a new unit that connects with a previous unit already taught, I need to help students forge that connection. I may need to bring out a transparency that I used in a previous lesson. I may need to pull down the map and say, you remember that we've already talked about the explorers from Spain. Now we're going to start talking about English explorers, so that students can see that there is a connection to what I'm teaching today and what I've learned in the past.
Today what you're going to be doing, you're going to read pages 98 to 101 in your social studies text. After you finish reading the text, you'll complete your graphic organizer for the words cash crop, tax, and rebelled.
Our third feature in building background is a very focused attention to key vocabulary and to the academic language of the lesson that we're teaching. If youngsters do not have the prerequisite vocabulary to learn about a content concept, I need to teach that vocabulary to them explicitly, not just once, but multiple times.
Okay, now we're moving on to comprehensible input. And I added this little comment because it said, at our school, we teach CBL, IBL, and all 5 types of PBL. And I have no idea what that means. So I can have all the knowledge in the world in my brain, but if I cannot make it comprehensible to the students, then it's useless. So let's talk about comprehensible input. We as teachers have the knowledge of the subject matter. However, we must make a way of taking this knowledge and making it comprehensible for all of our students. We must have a clear explanation of the task. Our speech must be appropriate for the students, and we must use a variety of techniques, whether it's gestures, body language, visuals. I always like to think about comprehensible input as I'm assessing the students. It sort of goes hand in hand, because if they're looking confused, they're not understanding what I'm talking about, they're totally lost, then I'm going to stop because I'm useless at that point. I may keep talking, but are they listening? Are they getting it? No. So I may have to rewind and try something different. Sometimes it's in the middle of a lesson plan that I've prepared very well, and it's just not working out. We have to be that flexible as teachers. So that's our whole point, is to teach the kids the knowledge, to get the knowledge across to them. And I feel like if we're not able to do that, then it doesn't matter if we prepared. It doesn't matter if we give an assessment. This is the most important part of the lesson, taking the knowledge that we have, because we're experts at whatever subject that we're teaching, the subject knowledge, and making that comprehensible for our students. Okay, now we're going to watch a short video on comprehensible input.
Comprehensible input is a term that was coined by Stephen Krashen some years ago, and basically it has to do with just exactly what the name implies. The input, or our speech to our students, our teaching, whatever we're doing needs to be comprehensible. Now, I think originally we were looking at primarily slowing down speech, enunciating carefully, making yourself as clear as you can with how you present orally your material. We have now broadened the definition of comprehensible input to include a variety of other things, such as I can be more comprehensible if I am showing visuals and photographs and illustrations. These can be things that students are looking up on the internet in order to support their understandings. They can be anything that the teacher brings in to illustrate a point. Certainly the use of textbooks and how they're laid out, how they're organized, has to do with comprehensibility. If a book is too cluttered and has too much information and too many charts and graphs and pictures on a page, it's not comprehensible. So the teacher will then need to do something to help the youngsters be able to navigate through that text. If a text has no support materials, no words are highlighted or bolded, or explanations are not clear, once again the teacher needs to take note of that and help the students understand what is there. Graphic organizers are used widely in classrooms. They can certainly help English learners to structure the complex information that they are learning. One thing that I like to encourage teachers to do is to fill one of the graphic organizers in partially for students to use. The key topics may be included in the graphic organizer so that the students have an opportunity to complete the rest of the graphic organizer on their own. In the secondary grades, teachers can use study guides, and for the English learners, some of the topics could be filled in ahead of time. Other ways that we can make those content concepts clear is by paraphrasing frequently when I'm giving information. I may certainly keep my lectures to a minimum for English learners, but sometimes you do need to provide information orally to students. So if I can present this information in more than one way, it gives the students an opportunity to hear it in more than one way. We can also do a lot of sharing with students. I like to have kids do activities in which one will be perhaps reading a short passage to the other then paraphrases back or tries to repeat the information back as best as he or she can. This is not only helping to make the content more clear, but it also gives them an opportunity to use English. And if they're not using English, they will not learn English.
Okay, now we're going to talk about siop strategies. And I think that the elementary teachers do a superb job in our system with teaching these strategies, simply because I think this cartoon it tells all about it. It says, "Are you sure Brooke is misspelled? It doesn't have a red squiggly line under it." Kids get very used to strategies, and that's very good that they learn these strategies, and that a red squiggly line means that they've associated that with the word being wrong. So it's very important that we use different strategies, and we teach these students different strategies to learn, because when they go to college, they have to come up with these strategies on their own. That's why it's important for us to prepare them for college, and part of that is using different strategies. Okay, siop strategies. There's metacognitive strategies, cognitive, and social strategies. Metacognitive is thinking about thinking, predicting, self-questioning, monitoring, evaluating. Cognitive is the active learning, making these connections, reading aloud, taking notes, highlighting, mapping information. And social strategies are the interaction, the cooperative learning, group discussion, and self-talk. And each of these are very important to incorporate into the classroom. Also, when we're talking about strategies, we need to make sure that we are providing ample opportunities for the students to use learning strategies, scaffolding techniques that need to be consistently used, modeling, supporting the student's understanding, a variety of questions or tasks that promote higher order thinking skills. I think it's very important that we get the students thinking about the content, and not only thinking about the content and writing the content, but also discussing the content. So that gets listening, reading, writing, and speaking about the content that they're learning every day.
Within the siop model, we make a very clear distinction between instructional strategies and learning strategies. Instructional strategies are those techniques and methods and approaches and activities that you do in the classroom. Such things as cooperative learning, the author's chair, all those different kinds of things that we use to enrich our teaching. When we talk about learning strategies, we're talking about the kinds of strategic thinking that youngsters do and adults do when we are reading and when we are learning. Just because students are not proficient English speakers does not mean that they cannot be good thinkers. We cannot wait until they have acquired a level of English proficiency that enables them to think actively within the language before we start teaching these very important cognitive and metacognitive strategies to them. The cognitive strategies that good learners use include such things as the ability to underline important information, to fill out good graphic organizers and structure information in that manner, to be able to know when you need to go back and reread, or to be able to hone in on important key vocabulary. This list is pretty long in terms of all these different things that good learners do to help themselves. Metacognitive strategies include being able to make good predictions, to be able to see that there's a difference in how we predict narrative text as opposed to expository text, to know when self-questioning will help you be able to understand very challenging text, the ability to clarify, to monitor your comprehension when reading. One of the most challenging aspects of expository text for students and adults alike is to figure out what's really important here. So determining importance and evaluating very important metacognitive strategies. Summarizing and synthesizing, being able to use visualization to help you picture something as you read can help you monitor and be able to comprehend better. So it's very, very important that while English learners are learning the language, teachers are teaching these cognitive and metacognitive strategies to them as well as to the rest of the students in the class.
Okay, interaction is actually one of my favorite parts of the siop model because I like to talk, and so I like interaction in the classroom as well. So frequent opportunities for interaction and discussion between teachers and students, among students, which encourage elaborated response about the lesson and concepts. Now, this is not always easy in the classroom. It takes a little bit of crowd control. It is much easier to teach as in, let me lecture and I'll talk 80% of the time, and then I'll let you do a handout or do a little assignment on what I've talked about. That is so much easier than allowing or coming up with a strategy for the students to be able to interact. And when you get into interaction between the students, you have to monitor the students. You have to talk about the grouping configurations, sufficient wait time for the student's response, and give ample opportunities for students to clarify key concepts. Interaction in the classroom is a very important key to success in the classroom. If it's a comfortable environment where the student feels comfortable to ask the teacher a question or ask a student a question, that should be fine. That's okay in the classroom. Talking is allowed in the classroom. Learning is allowed in the classroom. And they often say with siop and English learners, until they say the word, they don't own it. How many times have you heard someone say something or a song and you think that the song says a certain word until you see the lyrics? And until you are starting to sing the song, you don't really realize that it's a different word that they're using in the song. So unless the English learner speaks the words, then they don't ever own the words. So an active classroom involves talking. So the quietest classroom, there might not be as much learning going on. An active, interactive classroom involves the students communicating with each other and talking with each other.
In the research literature on classroom interaction, it has been found that teacher talk occupies anywhere from 70 to 80% of all interactions in the classroom. And the other 20 to 30% of the time is shared among all the other students in the class. For English learners in the classroom, having to share the other 20% with all the other kids is not going to give very much time for these youngsters to acquire English. What we advocate and what we know from research is that we must provide a greater amount of time in which students are speaking with each other and interacting with the teacher and among themselves. Now, this will not happen unless teachers carefully plan lessons where students are interacting with each other throughout the lesson and throughout the day. One of the ways that teachers can promote interaction in the classroom is through incorporating a variety of activities that require cooperative learning. And by this, I don't mean just putting kids in groups, but really structuring discussion for them, having them be required to complete a task together in which they have to talk and work and share with each other, all builds interaction opportunities.
Okay, the next component of siop is practice and application. Practice makes perfect. Practice, practice, practice. I like this little comic because it says algebra class will be important to you later in life because there's going to be a test 6 weeks from now. I know in the high school we hear about that a lot, like when am I ever going to use this? And so I thought that was funny. Why do I have to practice this? Not only do they have to know the knowledge, now they have to take that knowledge and they have to practice it and apply it. They can memorize vocabulary all that they want to and the definitions, but if they can't use those vocabulary words in a sentence, then they're useless for the student. They may be able to tell you what it is, but is that really what we want them to know? The definition? No, they must be able to practice the vocabulary and actually use it correctly in a sentence. So practice and application, hands-on materials or manipulatives provided for the students to practice using the new content. Activities provided for the student to apply content and language knowledge in the classroom. Activities to integrate all the language skills. For example, reading, writing, listening, and speaking. And actually, I'm going to post on my board these 4 competencies, reading, writing, listening, and speaking, and I'm going to make sure that we have an assignment every day that involves each of these components. Okay, you're going to watch a short video of a classroom of how she incorporates the practice and application of the lesson.
What we're going to talk about today, boys and girls, is we're going to talk about something that's called multiple meanings. And a lot of times when you read certain words, sometimes that word has more than one meaning. For example, the word draw. How many of you can think of a meaning for the word draw? Tell the person next to you. What do you think the word draw means? To make a picture or to... Anybody ready to share out loud? What does it mean to draw? Mia? Coloring. To color, to make a picture, I heard. So I'm going to write that here. To make a picture. Now I'm going to think of a picture for that word draw. And the picture I think of is like a pencil or a crayon and a paper. Or paint, right? Paintbrush. A little paintbrush here. Or chalk. We talked about that. Does anyone know another meaning for the word draw? Jason?
Like the draw, like you draw a card.
Draw a card? Okay, so like to take something out or to pick something. I'll put that. To pick. And maybe I'll have cards, like you said, and they'll all be here in a box, and someone will have to pick one. I'll put like a little person picking. They're going to draw a card. They're going to draw. They're going to pick. Those are two different meanings for the word draw. Cesar?
To do a picture.
To do a picture? Well, it kind of means this, to make a picture, to draw a picture. Another way to use the word draw, which I've heard, is when someone draws the curtains open. They kind of open something. To draw the curtains. Have you ever heard of that expression, to draw the curtains? So I'm going to put maybe to push. To push. Yeah, she does a lot of that. She gets words confused, doesn't she, Jacqueline? When she doesn't know what the meanings. So I'll draw a window here, and I'll have the curtains drawn. They're opened. So that's another way we can use the word draw. I'm going to look at our story right now. I'm going to read a sentence, and I want you to think of how the word draw is used in the sentence. Ready to listen? And it's a familiar story. It's one that we just read. Once Tommy took a flashlight and a pencil under his covers, and he began to draw pictures on his sheets. What type of draw is that? Can you tell me? Can you tell the person next to you first? What type of draw? Okay, I heard a lot of good answers. Samantha?
To make a picture.
Yeah, to make a picture. Listen to the next one. When the walls were up, one of the carpenters gave Tommy a piece of bright blue chalk. Tommy took the chalk and began to draw beautiful pictures all over the unfinished walls. That's it.
To make a picture.
To make a picture as well. Okay? So far in our story, we've used the word draw to make a picture. But now you know that there's different ways to use the word draw. It could mean to pick something, to draw something out of a hat, to draw a card. It could mean to push aside when you draw the curtains. Okay, so those are different ways that you can use the word draw. We're going to practice some more. Can you go to your seats and show me that you're ready? Okay, what you're going to do is you're going to have, this is something you're familiar with. You're going to have a piece of paper, and on one side it's going to say what? Read the word aloud. Draw. What's the definition here? To make a picture. On the other side, what word is it?
Draw.
And what does it say? To take out. And we just talked about those two definitions that you could have for the word what?
Draw.
Draw. So I'm going to pass out these papers, and you're going to draw a quick sketch. I'm going to give you about a minute to quickly sketch a picture that's going to help your brain remember what the word draw means to make a picture. You can do what I did. You can just do a paper, a paintbrush, a pencil, and then on the other side you can do kind of a sketch, kind of make what I did, just something quick so that you know what to do. Okay? Does everyone understand?
Yes.
Okay. Once I give you your paper, you may get started. Remember, a quick sketch just so that your brain remembers what that word might mean when you read it. Okay. So about a minute. Make sure you're reading the definition so that you draw the right sketch. To take out, you might want to do someone taking out a card or drawing a paper. Think of something quick you can draw.
Okay, now we get to lesson delivery. This is where the rubber meets the road. I thought this cartoon was funny because it says, I wonder if my teacher ever gets tired of saying wah, 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 wah all day. If you cannot, this is very important. You can plan strategies, different techniques, use graphic organizers, but actually the lesson delivery is very important. How you deliver the message. Content and language objectives should be clearly supported by the lesson delivery and posted in the classroom. This is just great to get into the habit of posting these clearly in the classroom so you can go back and recheck. And also, this is what we did today. This is what we've accomplished today. Also, they can't go home and say, we didn't learn anything in class today. Yes, we did. We did this, this, and this. And so it's a way as teachers, too, to go back and check and say, okay, did I get accomplished what we needed to get accomplished today? And sometimes you may not get all the objectives accomplished, and that's okay because we have to be flexible with our students and pace the lesson appropriate to the student's ability. Obviously, if the student looks lost and I'm not going to rush through and say, okay, well, we've got to get through this today, so I'm sorry if you don't get it. We may have to change our pace. We may have to go back. We may have to repeat something. So that's part of the lesson delivery. Really what you want is you want the students engaged 90% or more during the class. If they're not engaged, then you're talking to yourself. If they're hearing wah, 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 then they're not engaged and you're basically talking to yourself. Okay, now we're going to watch a short video on lesson delivery.
Okay, boys and girls, let's look up here. You should just be about done with your sketches. Now, boys and girls, did you need to write any words? No, just a quick sketch to tell your brain this is what draw means sometimes, and this is another definition for draw. Okay? Let's look at this sentence here. We're going to read the first sentence and look at which word it has, boys and girls. Draw. But look at the next sentence. And look at the next sentence. And look at the next sentence. And what we're going to do is we're going to read the first sentence and we're going to try to find the other sentence, if it's 1, 2, or 3, that uses draw the same way as the first sentence. And that's really tricky. But you know what's going to help us? I'm going to give you a clue. Sometimes this word doesn't help us. You know what helps us, boys and girls? The other words around it. Okay? That's what helps us figure out which type of draw we're going to be reading. Are we reading about this one, or this one? They try to trick you because you think, oh my gosh, they're all the same words. But they have what? Multiple meanings. Let's read the first one together. Tommy likes to draw pictures for his family and friends. Show me with your pictures that you have, which draw is it talking about? Which draw is that sentence talking about? Show me with your pictures. See? I see to make a picture there, to make a picture there, to make a picture there. If you are holding up the side that shows to make a picture, you are right. That's the draw they're using. Now, boys and girls, let's read it again. Ready? On the count of 3. Ready, Stephen? 1, 2, and 3. Tommy likes to draw pictures for his family and friends. Boys and girls, which other words helped us figure out that this word draw meant to make pictures? What other word helped us? It's like a clue. Yeah, the word pictures. I think that one told my brain, you know what? They're not talking about picking something. Not talking about opening a curtain or pushing something. So they have to be talking about making a picture. Okay, so now our job is, boys and girls, to find the other sentence that uses draw the same way. Do you think we can do it? Yeah. Let's read the first one. The man will draw a name from a hat and announce a winner. Show me with your pictures which draw is that one. Which draw is that one? Does that mean to make a picture or to take out? Okay, boys and girls, if you had the picture that meant to take out, you are correct. Okay, let's read the sentence one more time. The man will draw a name from a hat and announce a winner. Now, I didn't see any words around here that talked about art or pictures, so I know definitely it's not when you're making a picture. Which other word helped you? Think about that. Why don't you tell the person next to you, which other word helped you? Which word up there helped you decide that that was that meant to take out? Which other one? The man will draw a name from a hat. Winner? Okay, it could have been winner. Boys and girls, what other clue words helped us decide that this meant to take something out or to pick? Cesar.
Announce.
Okay, it could have been announce. What else? What other clue words? Remember, context, that's what's called context. You think about that when you're deciding what a word means. Noelle?
Winner.
Okay, announce a winner. Yeah, I think all of those clue words helped your brains decide, you know, this straw has a different meaning than the one we just learned. Let's read the next one. Ready? Let me draw the curtains to let more sunlight in the room. Now, is that on any of our paper?
No.
No. Is this draw the same as the top one?
No.
No, it's not. So we know that this one is not going to be the one that means the same as this draw. And here, boys and girls, I think the word curtains helped me decide. What about you? Yeah. And also to let more sunlight. Yeah, I think that helped me decide that it didn't mean to draw a picture or to pick. Ready for the last one?
Yeah.
Okay. Is this kind of easy? Yeah, it's easy how once you look for those clue words, it's really easy to figure out what a word means. Are you ready? Let's read the next one. The students draw pictures of what they see outside. Hold up your cards. Which draw is that? Very good. Okay. And which word, boys and girls, all together, which word helped us figure that out? Which word all together?
Pictures.
Pictures. Yeah. So in my mind, I'm thinking, well, if I had to choose one that uses draw the same way as this draw, which one do you think I would pick? Show me with your fingers. Which one would I pick? A lot of you say 3, and you are right. 3 would be the correct one. Good job. You guys just became really good at multiple meanings.
Okay, and the last component of siop is review and assessment. And I also want to say that the siop components don't particularly have to go in this order because reviewing and assessment you should be doing constantly, whether it's informally or formally. You should all, reading the faces of your students, seeing if they're bored, seeing if they're getting it, seeing if they're understanding it. And I thought that this comic was cute because it says, Mario, what's a metaphor? I don't know, what's the matter with you? So that shows that, I've been there, when you've taught a whole lesson and you've gone over metaphor and you've gone over certain words and then you ask a question and the students might act totally lost. So that right there is review and assessment without even giving a test, formally giving a test. So teachers are constantly doing this and assessing their students to see if they get it, if they've made the content comprehensible, or if they need to go back and change something. With review and assessment, you need comprehensive review of key vocabulary. You do not need to, as teachers, sometimes we teach the lesson and then we move on. But I'm finding a lot that this is happening a lot. The students memorize right before the test. They take the test. They get a good grade on the test. And then next week they have no idea what those words mean. So keep a running list, a comprehensive review of key vocabulary. Also, comprehensive review of key concepts that you're talking about. I know that if a student misses a day and they have to make up a test that was from a couple of weeks ago, or if they're just now getting around to it to make it up, they have no idea. They say, I can't remember this. So always make it comprehensive to tie together everything that they've learned. Regular feedback. Students love feedback. And And not only students, adults. Everyone loves feedback, whether it's good, whether it's bad. Everyone's looking for feedback. How did I do? I usually put smiley faces on tests if they make 100. If they don't have a smiley face, my students notice, where's my smiley face? What's wrong? And I teach high school students. Even high school students care whether they want feedback. Everyone, as an adult, I want feedback. So feedback is one of the most important things in a classroom, in the teaching, review, and assessment. An assessment of the student's comprehension and learning of all lesson objectives. This can just be spot check. It can be a ticket out the door. It can be turn and tell your neighbor what you learned today. If you're seeing someone sitting there that's not saying anything, then you know that's a red flag. Hey, I might need to go back and go over this and review this with that particular student. So review and assessment should be ongoing throughout the siop process, not just depending on pencil and paper tests or a portfolio. Let the students draw a picture if they can't explain it in words or paragraph form. Anything that you can get your English learners doing and involved is a great way to review and assess.
There are a variety of methods of authentic assessment that can be used with English learners as well as your other students. Certainly portfolios come to mind when you think about authentic assessment. In many schools and districts, they've fallen by the wayside, which I think is very, very sad. Being able to generate and gather examples of student work, some selected by the students themselves, is a powerful way to look at progress over time. And the power of portfolios has always been being able to look at student work from the beginning of a semester to the end, from a beginning of a quarter, beginning of a year, and look at student growth and development as the year has progressed.
Today what we will be doing in writing is I will be working with a group of students and we will be working on our portfolios. Some of you will actually be doing some writing conferences and reading conferences later this afternoon.
As a dual language program, we have decided to have the students have a portfolio from kindergarten to 6th grade. What I have done this year in my 6th grade classroom is extend that a little bit further.
So what you're going to do is you're going to take one of the pieces that you've chosen from your portfolio and you're going to put a post-it note. You're going to write the grade that piece was from, and you're going to reflect. You're going to reflect about the piece that you've written, something about the grade that you remember about the grade that you were in, and maybe something that you've changed or improved in. Okay? And so you're going to do that with each piece of writing that you've chosen to put into your portfolio. Okay?
I have them choose pieces from their working portfolios, and they reflect. I want them to see the growth that they've had from kindergarten to the point that they are now.
And you did this in 3rd grade?
Yeah. My favorite things to do.
And, oh, you haven't reflected on it. You just started reflecting, right? And what are some other pieces that you've chosen?
I chose this when I interviewed George. I learned a lot about George. The interview was very cool. I like it a lot.
And this was 6th grade, right?
Yeah.
So from 3rd to 6th, how do you feel you've improved? What are some things that you've improved? Do you feel more comfortable in writing?
Yeah.
And how? How do you feel more comfortable in writing?
Because I've been doing it so long. It's like easy.
So the more you do it, the better you get?
Yeah.
All right, what else did you put?
This. It's about like all the stuff I like. No, this is about allowance money.
So you were persuading, this was persuasive?
Yes.
So did this ever happen?
Yeah, it did. A little piece of paper.
What else?
This is when I wrote about in Spanish, when I wrote about what everybody wanted to be when they grow up.
You did this last year, grade.
Yeah.
Do you feel your Spanish has gotten better this year?
Yeah.
How?
And like spelling, I think. And talking.
Okay. So good. You have English pieces and your Spanish pieces in there. That's good.
They're looking at their academics. They're looking at their language because they're working with 2 languages. We do Spanish and we do English. So they see growth in both of their areas. And they also see areas that they need to improve on.
What are some things you feel you've improved in or maybe still need to improve in?
Maybe taking my time to write more and to write fuller sentences and maybe cut down on my run-ons.
Okay, so maybe when you reflect, that's something you can put in your reflection. Okay, good.
And that concludes our second session of the review of the siop components, the 8 components of Sheltered Instruction Observation Protocol. And remember to join the Edmodo group, and I'll see you for session 3, which will be about incorporating strategies and these techniques into your own classroom. Thank you.